Hello folks, Aloy is now available for players on PlayStation, but everyone will get her for free in version 2.2. She is the first guest character from another game in Genshin, and Ashley Birch will still be voicing her in English, which is pretty nice for fans of Horizon Zero Dawn. At first, she seems to fit the main DPS role since her skill imbues her normal attacks with cryo, and she also has a unique bow that boosts normal and charge attack. However, after playing her for a while, she seems like a way better fit as a burst or swap support instead of staying on the field for a long time. She is actually one of the best characters besides Bennett to buff the team with the 4-piece Noblesse set. Let me explain why. Her normal attacks is a 4-hit combo, but there is a huge delay in her final hits. You can dash cancel her last hit, but if we look at the scaling, the initial hit doesn't actually do that much damage. Here's a comparison with Fischl, who has a decent normal attack physical build. Aloy also loses to Yoimiya in terms of normal attack scaling. I know her elemental skill will buff the normal attack damage, but it's not enough. Her elemental skill does a good chunk of damage from the initial toss, and splits into 6 small cryo bombs. When these bombs damage an enemy, it will reduce their attacks and give Aloy a stack of coil. Each coil stack increases her normal attack damage, and when she gets 4 coil stacks, her normal attack gets imbued with cryo for 10 seconds. That is the main reason we thought Aloy was a main DPS. However, like I said earlier, even her attack buff is not enough to make up for the low scaling and motion values. Her elemental skill is better used as a damage and energy particle generator for a quick swap playstyle. The initial bomb will generate 5 cryo particles if it hits an enemy. The little bomblets do not make any particles. If you have a sacrificial bow, using her skill again will cause the first set of small bombs to explode when the second set spawns, just like Klee's elemental skill. Another similarity with the bomblets is how it interacts with Anemo. Kazuha, Sucrose, and Jean can all group up the bomblets together, but for some reason, the god of Anemo cannot group them up. Maybe miHoYo will think Venti's burst will be too powerful if it groups up enemies and bombs. It's not that bad, since there is a cooldown between coil stacks, so you want the bomblets to stagger. And even though you don't care about her normal attack buff from coil stacks, both her Ascension passives does increase her E and Q damage from getting the coil buff. Speaking of sacrificial bow and bomblets, both the initial hit and the bomblets can refresh her elemental skill. However, Aloy needs to be on the field for the refresh to happen. And I guess the worst part about the skill is the animation lock. Other characters can dash right after using their skill, allowing you to escape an enemy's incoming attack. With Aloy, you are locked into that throwing animation for quite some time. Here is me spamming the dash after using the skill for comparison. Sucrose can pretty much dash immediately, and the other two can dash fairly quickly after using the skill, but Aloy has to wait until she is done lobbing the grenade. Aloy's elemental burst is a quick cryo nuke with very good scaling. The part that makes this burst even better is the low energy cost and cooldown. It costs 40 energy to use. With a sacrificial bow and 140 energy recharge, she can instantly get her burst back. Here is an example of a burst combo with the usual Sucrose support. The most important part is to have pyro on the enemies before using Aloy's burst for that sweet melt damage. And since you want the burst to melt, this is one of those times you want to Q first, then E. That way, you don't consume the pyro application with the weaker skill. Aloy needs crystal marrows to ascend along with the materials from the new Spectre enemies, which are pretty annoying to farm without a ranged unit. Here's the locations of all these materials. You can watch my crystal marrow farming route by clicking the icon on the top right. I will also have the link for the Tavot interactive map in the description below. For her talents, you want to level her burst, then skill. Unless you really like Aloy and want to use her as a main DPS, don't worry too much about her normal attacks. Both her Ascensions are nice. Ascension 2 gives you and your team bonus attack when getting any stack of coil, which will happen every time you cast her elemental skill. Her Ascension 4 gives bonus cryo damage after reaching 4 stacks of coil that builds up over time. The rushing ice state lasts 10 seconds, and so does this passive. Don't worry too much on maximizing the damage here, just treat it as a bonus that you don't need to worry about. And her non-combat passive lets you go near boars and birds without spooking them away. They will still run if you get too close, but you can use this passive to do Sayu's boar farming without needing a shield. However, you can already get tons of meat and fowl from expeditions, so this passive isn't that great overall. It does match her backstory as a hunter though. Currently, all her constellations are locked. The time has not yet come. I think her constellations will be available around February when Horizon Forbidden West releases. Will they be free from an event, or will we need to spend Primo Gems to get them? We will find out when the time comes, but I'm not too hopeful about this one. For her weapons, I will separate them into damage and support. Let's start with the weapons that increases her E and Q damage the most. The best 5-star weapon is the Skyward Harp since it boasts the highest base attack and provides both crit stats. The Thundering Pulse is okay just for the stats, but you end up wasting the passive. There are other characters that can utilize this bow better. Her best 4-star weapon will be the Stringless. The passive increases both her abilities, and the Elemental Mastery substat will help out the reverse melt damage. Both the Blackcliff and Viridescent Hunt can help balance your crit stats to make it a more even 1-to-2 ratio. Both of these bows are always decent on any damage dealer. The Alley Hunter is also nice for a swap support, which is, in my opinion, the best way to play Aloy. You can also use the Windbloom Ode, but to make use of that passive, you will need to E, then Q, which will reduce the damage of your reverse melts. If you are not running a melt team though, this will be another great weapon choice. Now for the support weapons. In this build, Aloy is meant to help out the team by providing lots of energy particles and utilize the 4-piece Noblesse set to give the team an attack buff. The best one is the 5-star support bow, Eulogy of the End. Aloy can get stacks of sigils when the bomblet hits enemies, similar to how the sacrificial bow can refresh her E. That being said, the sack bow will be the second best choice thanks to how often the passive can refresh her elemental skill. The Favonius bow is another support weapon if you don't have the other two available. However, since Aloy needs only around 150% energy recharge, you can also give her one of the damage bows, and she can end up buffing your team and do decent damage at the same time. Sadly, the Predator bow isn't good for her. It does match Aloy aesthetically, but the passive buffs her normal attacks, and you need to be playing on a PlayStation to utilize the passive anyway. For her artifacts, once again, two different builds depending on if you are playing Aloy as a DPS or support. I'll switch it up and start with the support build first. For that build, you want 4-piece Noblesse. The 4-piece attack buff lasts for 12 seconds, and Aloy's burst has a 12-second cooldown. With enough energy recharge, she can pretty much have 100% uptime on this attack buff. And how much energy recharge is needed? Well, if you want to fully get her burst back with one elemental skill, then you will need at least 266.6% energy recharge. However, since you'll be getting particles from your teammates throughout the fight, having around 150 ER is good enough to sustain her burst in most situations. If your overall team isn't providing enough energy for her burst, then add a little more ER until it's comfortable. You can also go with 4-piece Tenacity of the Millilith, since the bomblets can activate the 4-piece bonus while Aloy is off-field. However, it is a little inconsistent trying to kite enemies into the bomblets since the buff only lasts 3 seconds. The bomblets does stay on the field for around 17 seconds, but I still don't recommend this set. Stick with 4-piece Noblesse when using a support Aloy. Regardless of which set you use, her Ascension 2 passive will still provide a minor attack buff to the team. For the stats, you want enough energy recharge to have 100% burst uptime, then go with the offensive stats like cryo percent, crit, and attack. She is one of those supports that can still do decent damage. Now for her offensive artifacts. There are 2 sets that I really like. One of them is the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. A lot of her damage comes from the 40 energy cost burst, and the 2-piece gives some needed energy recharge. The other set is a hybrid 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Blizzard Strayer. If you do not have good stats for a Blizzard Strayer set, then swap it with one of the 18% attack sets. Try to farm the Noblesse domain a little to get 2 decent pieces, since the extra damage to her burst is really nice. As for the stats, build her like any DPS. Attack percent Sands, Cryo Goblet, and Crit Helmet. The most valuable substats will be Crit, then Attack. You want around 150% energy recharge, and Elemental Mastery also helps out with the reaction damage. If you are running Aloy on a freeze team, or if there's another cryo unit on the team, then you can utilize the 4-piece Blizzard Strayer set. Just make sure you are not overcapping on the crit rate if you choose this route. Now finally, team comps. Aloy fits pretty well in a variety of teams. You can easily substitute Diona with Aloy for a more offensive cryo support. With a sack bow, Aloy can generate the same amount of energy particles as Diona. You end up losing the shield and minor healing, so you might need another healer on the team. But the trade-off is more damage and potentially a 4-piece noblesse attack buff for the entire team, plus her Ascension 2 passive. Quick swap teams are also pretty fun with her due to the low energy cost. There is a lot of variety with these teams. You can pretty much use any character with a strong burst that you enjoy playing. These are action-heavy teams, and it's great seeing them constantly hit enemies with their elemental burst. Aloy can also fit in any reverse melt team. Overall, she is a strong character that can provide lots of energy particles and a strong nuke for your team. She can also be built to be more of a support, providing the 4-piece noblesse buff with almost 100% uptime. Regardless of how you are utilizing her kit, she is a great addition to any team, especially as a free character. Thanks for watching. If these guides are helpful, leave a like and comment below. And as always, have fun out there, visitors from another world.